Yeah, yeah. Never not, never under God, never ever, I'm forever on. Check my repertoire, check my repertoire, don't check me not. Let's just checks involved. I've been feeling like I'm next to God, next to God, next to God.
Welcome to the Brothers in Time podcast, right? This is going to be season 3 called Guardians, right? I'm going to be joined with Sanchez, Hudson, and myself, right? So we're going to have some rules for this conversation.
Rule number 1. A person who is saying something obvious should be assumed to be saying something subtle until proven otherwise. Rule number 2. A person who is saying something wrong should be assumed to be saying something counterintuitive until proven otherwise. An example is a whale a fish? At the lowest level, morphologically speaking, if it looks like a fish, it swims like a fish, therefore it's a fish. At the mid-level, it breathes air and has live birth, so it's a mammal. But at the highest level, it reverts back. We are bracketed on Darwin's phylogenetic tree between lampreys, which are clearly fishes, and coelacanths. So we don't always understand if we are sophisticated or unsophisticated relative to somebody's point of view.
All right, so let's get started. So Sanchez, I gave you some leeway to ask me some questions, right?
Oh, yeah.
The topic today is going to be about Afghanistan.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you reached out to me and pretty much gave me permission to dive into your mind and kind of get a perspective of somebody who was boots on the ground. So first I want to, kind of address the things that everybody is talking about, So when you tune into these news outlets, everybody is saying that the Taliban have taken over regardless of like U.S. intelligence saying that it'll take longer or it wouldn't be as fast as it did happen. But did you kind of already know after having an experience in Afghanistan that the moment we pulled out that the Taliban was capable of doing such, having such a quick and violent blitzkrieg that is as successful as it's been?
Well, I mean, you can talk about that on two different levels, right? One level is the Taliban as an organization, and also you can talk about it on the level of ideology, right? The Taliban ideology. So It depends on which way you want me to go.
Whichever way you want to steer.
So a little bit of background, right? And if you could switch to my screen.
Okay.
Right, so you can see this?
Yeah, good.
All right. So David McKiernan, right, you can come back to my face. So David McKiernan was the first commanding officer, right, in Afghanistan, right? And then when Obama took over presidency, he was like I think he was only the commander for like 3 or 4 months after Obama took over. So at that point, it was like switching between what our goals were in Afghanistan. So to answer your question, I have to ask both of you a question, which would be, what did you think the purpose of us going to Afghanistan was? And we'll start with you, Sanchez.
Okay, so I believe our purpose in Afghanistan was to essentially go in there, kill fucking Osama bin Laden and destroy Al-Qaeda. And that's as far as my initial understanding of why we went there. After 9/11, that was the mission. We went over there and we spent all these years trying to kill Osama. And, obviously once he died, I was still in grade school. So we thought that was when the war was going to be over after we had killed him. We thought that was mission success. But after that, I don't know why we stayed.
The commander's intent, essentially, or the end result that we were looking for was the enemy was going to be neutralized, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Hudson?
That's about on par, yeah.
Okay. So if that was our goal, right, and I'm not going to have any discrepancies about that specific goal because I feel like that's what most Americans would assume, right? So in what year was it? In 1979, the Mujahideen was essentially in charge of Afghanistan. And then the Russians took over. They were invaded by the Soviets. I think it was in 1979. And the Mujahideen were like a bunch of militant warlords who all had different like Sunni, Shiite, Pashto, a bunch of different tribes. You know what I mean? So once they expelled the what's it called, the USSR, the Mujahideen and the Taliban started to get into like an internal civil war, right? And it was about ideologies, right? The difference between the two was really just about the ideologies that were trying to be successful. So then you cut to when we invaded, right? And we had an enemy and we had a clear goal. But when you're talking about counterinsurgency operations, who is the enemy, right? The enemy literally could be the person next door to you, right? Just because they believe this thing, they're going to be more apt to assist the Taliban in doing their everyday shit. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So in Iraq, they coined this term, which a lot of infantry dudes, which, you know, that's what I am, we had an issue with, was hearts and minds. Because you get trained to fight an enemy. You don't get trained how to affect somebody's heart and mind, because at the end of the day, what we're really trying to show them is that our way of life is better than what they're used to. So that's kind of where I can't really say that we knew that the Taliban was going to do this as an organization versus the ideology.
Okay.
Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, of course.
So, and I can give a little bit of backstory about why, if that's, can you go back to my screen, my computer screen? So in 1980, right, and this information is from the World Bank, right, in conjunction with the CIA. So this is the literacy rate of adults, percentage of people's 15 and above, right? So the average age of anybody over 15 and their capacity to be literate. So literacy is defined by this World Bank as who can both read and write and with understanding a short, simple sentence about their everyday life. Now, I want to focus on what that specifically means. A short, simple statement about your everyday life, right? When do you think you could only do that? Like at what age?
Oh my God. I mean, damn. Maybe even first grade, like writing a sentence and reading my own name.
Hudson?
I would say like prior to that, man, because you're able to articulate as like a little kid, like I am hungry.
True,
I want to play. I want to go outside, or I went outside.
But being able to read and write that is what it's saying literacy is.
Yeah.
So the capacity to read your home language and be able to understand what it's saying and then write it out yourself.
And no, Sanchez is probably on par about first grade.
Yeah.
That's when you really start to develop like the writing skills.
So
comprehension.
So the left and right limits that we have here is 1980 or 1979 is about 18%. And then at 2010, right, because we invaded in 2001, so it's about 30%. So you have to understand that that's people who are capable of doing what I just said. That's the amount of people capable of reading and writing one sentence about their everyday life. So I had something written up here a minute ago about direct, organizational, and strategic that I should have left. But direct is dealing with, you can go back to my camera, is 1 to 100. Org is hundreds to hundreds of thousands, and strategic is hundreds of thousands to millions. So now we're talking about how are these people controlling, right, their infrastructure or their government organizations or just what a country actually is, like the everyday shit that a country has to do. If somewhere between 30 and 18% of them can read and write. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's where that's our, what would you call it? That's the control. That's where we started in Afghanistan. So going back to, if you're still looking at my screen, I don't know how to get to this in between here. There we go. So after they fired McKiernan, right? And McKiernan, what he was saying basically was that this is around the time you have to remember that Obama said he wanted to do the troop drawdown. He wanted to start pulling us out. He was trying to win. And McKiernan basically outlaid a plan that said that we have to build up their economy, build up their infrastructure, build up their education, and we need more troops. And I think he was allotted like 16,000 more troops or something like that, right? So very soon after that, he was fired. And then they picked up McChrystal. Now, McChrystal is famous for being being in charge of like spec ops or special forces, right? SOF in Iraq. Like he's a great general, this, that, and the other. And he basically made the same assessment as his predecessor, saying that we need more people. If this is what you want us to do, we need more people. Because this is also around the time when it was no longer about just killing the Taliban. You know what I mean? Because during the initial invasion, right, the Taliban would fight. It's very different than Iraq, right? And I've been to both. So in Iraq, during the invasion, there was a standing force that kind of gave us some trouble in the beginning, but that was maybe a year tops, where they were like uniformed and completely coming at us, right? And then after that, it was just completely coin operations where like we were dealing with insurgents and small cells of people that just didn't want us there. But the Taliban is an organization that would just go off into the wilderness and just chill. Right. There's a road in Afghanistan called Route 1. It's the ring road that connects every part of Afghanistan. It runs around the entire outside. There was a part of, I think it was like in 2003, where we completely lost control of every piece of Route 1. We could not drive on Route 1 without getting hit. So we did like a troop surge, and then we started to push the Taliban back a little bit. But the issue here is that literacy rate thing that I'm going to talk about, right? So you have in Afghanistan, right, there's the issue with the Americans, I guess you would say, is that when we are talking about these foreign countries, we've never lived there, right? We've never grew up missing certain pieces of, human needs, right? And are you still on my monitor?
Yeah, I'm going there now.
So this is Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, right? And in this is like a basic nursing thing. If you've done any level of medical training above like EMT, you start to learn about this stuff. But this 5-state model can be divided into deficiency needs and growth needs, right? The first 4 levels are often referred to as deficiency needs. And the top level is known as growth or being needs. So deficiency arises due to deprivation and are said to motivate people when they are unmet. Also, the motivation to fulfill such needs will become stronger the longer the duration they are denied. For example, the longer a person goes without food, the more hungry they will become. So some of this doesn't really apply right now, but we'll start with So the first one is physiological needs, right? For human survival. So food, water, shelter, clothing, warmth, sex, and sleep. So Afghanistan, you can go back to my screen, Afghanistan, you basically had a bunch of rural communities, right? Very small villages, maybe 400 or 500 people in the larger ones, right? And in the more urban areas, you have what you could call a city, I guess, but the infrastructure is shit. The grocery stores or the markets or whatever, it's very hit or miss whether or not you're even going to be able to buy food. So most of Afghanistan survives by farming through the summer to be able to survive the harsh winters, right? And for those of you who don't understand, it fucking snows in Afghanistan like you've never seen. So you have a society of people who basically can't even feed themselves. Right. So when you start talking about reading and writing, they don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? They're literally just trying to eat. Do you see what I'm kind of going with that?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So then you have a village elder, right? You have this tribal elder who it's not a meritocracy there. So it's not the person that has the most ability to lead. It's just the person that was born into that position. You know what I'm saying? Like a patriarchy almost, or the person that has the most power. Right. And by power over there, it means like the capacity to influence or coerce your life into a negative way. Right. So the Taliban would come in and be like, hey, I'm in charge now. And there's really not much you can say about it.
Yeah.
So this village elder, right? And this story I'm about to tell you may be a little anecdotal, but it is what it is. So we were going into this village, and at the time the mission set had kind of changed. It went more towards what we were doing in Iraq, which is PRT missions, which means provincial reconstruction teams. So we're essentially teaching them better methods of farming to help their yields of their crops, better ways of like, what is it? Purifying water and shit. Just super basic, farming tactics, like agricultural things, and then infrastructure things is like buildings go and this, that, and the other. So we were tasked this one day to go out and provide rakes, shovels, and some other farming equipment to this village, right? And the moment we get into the village, first off, we get ambushed. So essentially what that's telling you is the Taliban does not want these people to progress, right? They don't want things to get better for these people. So we dealt with the ambush or whatever, and then we continued mission, and we got in, and we started talking to the village elder. The village elder told my lieutenant, and this is a direct quote from my interpreter. The elder told my lieutenant that dragons were coming down from the mountain and burning his crops.
Huh.
Right. Dragons. Do you see where I'm going with like their level of cognitive ability? Right. And I personally believe that that's tied to their level of literacy, right? Because that same dude is the dude who's in charge of telling them what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
That's the same dude that's telling them what they should and should not be doing. Right. So now when you understand that piece for what it is, you now understand the fight for what it was. We're trying to teach these people certain concepts or certain things, but this other group of people is telling them that we're evil, right?
Yeah.
And the way things work, and this is going to be, I'm going to bring in Star Wars. Like, I know both of you are huge Star Wars fans. And if you've watched Star Wars from A New Hope all the way to The Mandalorian, right? The Empire starts to look differently once you get to The Mandalorian, right? What's to say, right? In Afghanistan, we are the Empire, right? And let's say, for instance, that we have the Afghans' best intentions at heart. Give you something positive, right? And that's from the authority perspective, right? From us down. But the subjective experience of these people, because of this belief that they hold back here, this is going to look evil no matter what it is that we give them. No matter what it is, it's going to look that way. So the goal is to circumvent that and affect this belief. So when you have people, for instance, who the Taliban wasn't allowing women to go to school. The Taliban was basically treated women like property, right? The basic human needs or the civil rights movements that we've had in our country in like the 60s and the 50s that Afghanistan has never had. So when we're saying things like they should have been able to do this or they should have been able to do that, on what basis should they have been able to do this? So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's such some really good points, because like you mentioned earlier, essentially a lot of the things that you're talking about when you were first discussing about talking about this, about our needs and stuff, these people are having third world problems. It's not until, like you said, they take care of these necessities such as food, they have a stable place to live, they can go to school, they become more literate, and that's once they have these things that we in America have, that kind of enables them to kind of put those needs on the back burners, because that you don't have to worry about what am I going to eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner. It doesn't matter. You can fucking walk half a mile someplace and you'll get food. But that frees up that free thinking where, you know what? I don't like the fact that I'm a woman. I don't get paid as much as a man. Or, you know what? I don't like the fact that I have to stay at home all day, And I think that's what the Taliban was, I think it makes sense why they would want to do something like that, because that doesn't enable these people to think in that type of free manner where they're just worried about staying alive, fucking feeding themselves, and getting enough food to survive the winter. And that's all that they're focused on. They're not focused on, aligning with the American way of life. So that makes perfect sense. And I can see why the Taliban would want something like that, and why they would prevent women from going to school, because it takes away that ability to think freely like that. Instead, they want them to just think about, is my husband happy? What am I making tonight? Or, whatever else they do over there. I don't really understand their culture, but by taking away their ability to know more, become more literate, they're also taking away their ability to kind of conflict with the Taliban's ideology.
Yeah. Hudson?
Yeah, I'm curious to see if that's an intentional action from the Taliban, though.
Yeah.
That's saying that they're on a higher plane of thought than their people. More than likely, I would say it's a conservation of what the known is.
Oh,
the known
shit!
life is staying at that level. So I would doubt that it's a conscious effort to suppress their people, and more of a conscious effort to preserve what they know.
Could I use a different word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. Yeah.
Would that word describe what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
Conserve. So another anecdotal thing that I feel like ties directly into what you just said is I lived on a very small patrol base, right? I'm infantry. I don't really want to go too far down that rabbit hole of what it is that I do or what I was supposed to be doing. However, the base that we lived on was very fucking small, and it was down the road from a larger compound called Ghazni, where we were being supported by like the Polish and a lot of Americans, right? We may have been like 15 clicks away from there, right? So we're a little bit secluded. But our entire mission, right, like other than doing presence patrols and kind of, being a deterrent for the Taliban to be maneuvering, was to build a road from Ghazni to Gardez, right? And Ghazni and Gardez, pull up a map. Right. If you can see my screen now. So do you see this road, this red one? This is Route 1. It goes all the way around here. Kandahar, Kalat, Ghazni, Kabul. So this is the most improved road that they have. Right. So I was in Ghazni, right? This was the province that we ended up in. We actually started in Wardak, Logar, and then we moved down to Ghazni, but that's besides the point. But this stretch of terrain right here, right, is where we were trying to build this road. Right, you can switch back to me. But what was happening was we would get local nationals, right, with like their tar trucks, and we were teaching them how to build these roads and improve their infrastructure. Because without infrastructure, you can't move logistics, right? So let's say somebody in Kalat or Kandahar has some dope ass crops and they make a fuck ton of it.
Yeah.
Right. They can't get it to fucking Gardez.
Yeah.
Right. It's just not possible. So they're not only are they losing out on business or being able to provide for more people, there's no connection.
Yeah.
So what we were doing was trying to build this road. And I think we may have made it 5 clicks. Right. Because every time we made any progress, the Taliban was just literally coming and blowing up like the one bridge that connected the west side of our AO to the east side. Right. They would just blow up the bridge. Right. And what does that tell you about these people? Like it's like a toddler reaction. Like, you're trying to help me? Fuck you. I don't want your help.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like when you're saying it's to conserve a way that they're already used to, 100% agree. 100% agree.
Insane. Okay. Hudson, you have any question for Dylan? You want me to just...
No, man, keep it rolling.
All right, sweet. Excuse me. Another big thing that on social media, especially either news networks, social media, or people that we all have on our news feeds, I'm pretty sure we've all come across that one post where they say, all of that was for nothing. all those soldiers died for nothing. All that equipment that we gave them was for nothing. Do you wholeheartedly believe those statements? And what do you have to say to these people?
So that's a two-way street, I guess. There's two ways I'm going to react to that.
Okay.
So for the people that are saying it, either A, my question would be, do they have carnal knowledge of the experience itself? Right? Because there's something to be said for you can know something and not understand it. You know what I mean? So like if I'm, oh my God, none of these markers are going to work. So this is Afghanistan or being in Afghanistan, right? This is something I've experienced. Mm-hmm. So I understand this. I may not understand it all, but I understand it for what it is. The regular civilian who has never been can only ever know the appearance of it or the way it looks to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So that's how I take it, right? From their perspective, that's what they think. That's fine. But that's why I prefaced all of this by asking, what was our purpose? Right? What was the goal? Or what is the goal that everybody thinks? So that goal is going to teach us, if you do a little bit of backwards planning, on the process in which we're going to implement this thing. Get all these pens.
Somebody give this man a new marker. Shit. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. So the process to meet this goal, right? Okay. That's what it's going to show us, right? The way in which we're going to do this thing. Now you can say, do we need to over here? Was there a need at all? Right. This would be the beginning. And a lot of people are saying when they say that there was no reason to go, that's their argument, right? You know what I'm saying? So like, but the fact that we've already gone means that it exists. You can't go backwards now and say that we should have never gone and try to build an argument from there because we're already fucking there. Yeah. We're already there. So this is already in existence. There, yeah. So you can't say whether or not we needed to anymore. Right. So I have another question before we get to that. Let's say you are really, this is for both you and Hudson, right? Okay. Hold something in your mind, and for the audience as well, hold something in your mind that you are really, really good at doing, right? You are the subject matter expert, or at least very capable at that thing. And there's a person next to you that is not as capable as you. They're actually failing, and you're watching them fail, and you know what they need to be able to be successful. Do you give that information to them? Do you provide that information to them, or do you not? Sanchez.
I would say yeah, to be honest, because my mindset behind something like that, I'll use work as an example because, you know, I would like to think that wherever anybody works, that's where they're subject matter experts because they do it on a daily basis, whether you like it or not. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I like to be...
So you're going to help.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, one thing about the Army that really was became a part of who I am as a person is taking care of your guys, taking care of your team. And I want to make sure that if I'm out for whatever reason, I'm not the only person who's capable of doing that. Like, I know it makes me an asset, and I think that's a selfish way sort of thinking because I've met people who don't want to teach somebody because that's the whole reason they're still employed is because they're the only person who knows how to freaking do that, and they stay like that because they don't want to teach anybody. But, you know, coming out of the Army, I've realized that it's a force enhancer whenever I can teach somebody something they don't know, but that I'm good at. So whether I need help with it or if I'm busy doing something else, I have that peace of mind knowing that the team is taken care of because of that, because of me teaching this person how to do it.
Yeah. Hudson? Are you helping?
Same premise. Yeah, absolutely helping.
Okay. So what I think Sanchez was describing is you're improving the efficacy of the group, right? But my point there is that we all agree that if somebody needs help, we're going to help. And if I'm better, you know, objectively, whatever, I'm morally obligated to help, right? I feel morally responsible to help that person. And if I don't help him and I just sit there and watch him struggle and I get some type of kick out of it, I'm just a dickhead. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So we all think that. So now that I've basically explained what was going on in Afghanistan, I feel like every single American would be like, yes, they need help. But the question is, what is the process in which we are going to help them? That is the question. Do you see what I'm saying now?
Yeah. Okay.
So if our goal was to kill the enemy, right? Do you know the difference between germ theory and terrain?
Hit us with it.
So the basic premise of germ theory and terrain is one is that the germ, the thing that is outside of you, right, is the enemy. This is the thing that we need to attack because if this thing is gone, you won't have any issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But terrain, the opposing theory, is that if you are healthy, this virus won't affect you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So to say that is to say the enemy is the virus in this context, right? And the way that we approached this war, or the way that it was being presented how to approach this war, is that this was the virus, and if we just kill them, they're okay. Right? We take this away, and then their country will just blossom and flourish. But that's not exactly the case.
Yeah.
And if you go back to what I was saying about those generals, they were presenting the arguments for why we needed to do certain things like economy and the rebuilding of education. And we started doing these things in Iraq, right? I'll go back to Iraq a little bit. And these things were working, but we pulled out too early, right? Americans have the attention span of a goldfish, right? You give them something new to be upset about, they're going to be upset about it. So it's a lot of half measures that were happening, and it's about optics at that point, because that was what the political system has become about. It's not whether or not something is improving efficacy, it's whether or not it gives the appearance of improving efficacy.
Okay.
And that's something that bothers me a lot, because I don't care if it looks good, it has to be good, right? I don't care if I look like I'm doing my job, but really when I'm walking around as like an EMT or something and I don't even know how to put on a tourniquet, right? I'm not actually good at my job. And if something actually happens, I'm not going to be able to uphold it, right? So we're going to go back to killing the enemy is important, right? And germ and terrain theory, I feel like it's not one or the other. Both of them need to exist at the exact same time, right? Those things are entangled in a way that not very many people fully understand, where we needed to do both simultaneously. So like when we're talking about the education, right? What we're really talking about is giving people the option to question things. Yeah. So I'm going to take this back to America and how America was founded, right? So there's a symbol. You guys know what this is? Like the Illuminati or whatever.
It's a great seeing eye.
Right. So the common misconception is what the Illuminati is, or what it was at first. So the Illuminati was founded in 1776. That year should be very familiar to all of us, but it was founded in Bavaria, Germany. And it was founded in response to the Catholic Church, right? So the Catholic Church around that time was in control of everything, right? Everything in the world they were in control of, right? And it's not dissimilar from when you go from a strategic level, right? And you talk about Afghanistan, the Taliban is in charge. So they're teaching everybody what is right and what is wrong. So to say that is to say, like, if you enjoy music, you enjoy art, you enjoy technology, you enjoy the ability to say whatever the fuck you want to say, you need to thank the Illuminati, because they infiltrated the Catholic Church, and they were physicists and mathematicians, and they essentially brought science into the mainstream, or the scientific method of being able to question things, right? So the biggest difference between America and the Middle East is that we created a structure or a system in which we are able to question religion. You can question religion. You can question these beliefs, and you're not going to die for doing it. You get murdered for it.
Yeah.
And then when you go back to Afghanistan, and the Catholic Church time frame, the level of literacy of the average Westerner was fucking low as shit too. Right? And then once they started to be able to read these books, that's when you started having outcroppings of other religious macros, right?
Yeah.
Of like philosophical beliefs and stuff, right? So then all these different philosophies started to bounce off of each other. And then now we have what we would consider liberty, right? Everybody has the inherent right to freedom of themselves to make whatever choice they fucking want.
Exactly.
So, and to be able to do that in Afghanistan, it would have taken a lot. Now, whether or not it's possible versus probable, I don't really want to get into that. But now that we can see that, we can start to talk about America as a whole and the issues that are facing, veterans specifically. But if you have another question, go ahead.
Okay. Hudson, do you have any?
Nope, I'm good.
Looked at my notebook here. So you've actually answered a lot of these. I was going to ask you about what your mission was. Let me see. You already talked about that. So with your experience with the Afghans, one of the biggest things that is also being talked about is the fact that they are unwilling to fight for their freedom, that they're cowards or spineless. They didn't resist to the Taliban at all, but you never hear about heroic stories of the Afghans fighting, the Taliban. You never hear about the personal experience of what it's like to be an Afghani in the ANA trying to fight for essentially anything else but being under Taliban rule. Do you agree that through your own personal experience, did you walk away thinking that these Afghans didn't necessarily want to change their way of life? Did they put any effort into learning what you guys were teaching them? Did they put up a fight essentially? And did they give you the impression that they were willing to fight and die for a new way of life? And if you have any story to tell where you witnessed Afghan bravery, I think that'd be something good for people to hear.
So C2, right? And in the Army, C2 is command and control. Okay. But the other way you can talk about C2 is climate and culture, right? So an anecdotal experience that I have, right? We had an Afghan commander, or I guess you would call, he's like a captain essentially. And his name was Kari, right? And I can't tell you how much of a thug Kari actually was. So I've had really, really great officers in my career, and I've had really, really bad ones. And on this deployment specifically, on my second one, I had a really, really bad lieutenant and platoon sergeant combination. So it was real rough. But we were coming back from a patrol. We had done some shit, and it's like a 12-hour day. And then we're doing like a route recon to figure out how we're going to get back. And there's this village, the set of 3 villages that we were going to have to drive past, Ruzikala, Alukel, and something else I can't remember. And we know that the Taliban operates out of there, right? That's what we knew for a fact. So Kari was like, please don't go near here. Let's just get home, right? And my lieutenant basically told him to go fuck himself, and we drove past him. So we're all in up armored MRAPs and shit, and they have those little 4Runner trucks with like 12 ANA dudes in the back seat, right? And an RPG comes from the village to our west. And if it had arced, if the dude had aimed it just a little bit higher, it would have arced and landed in the bed of that truck, right? And it would have killed every one of them dudes. But it landed outside the bed of the truck, and they were all fine. So they're getting down, they're taking cover, and my lieutenant does one of the dumbest things I've seen, and he dismounts us into an open field, right? And you have to understand that as an infantryman, I'm being aware of what's called METTC, Mission Enemy Time Terrain Troops and Civilians on the Battlefield, right? And within that is something called REDS, like Risk Estimated Danger Space, Danger Zones, whatever. So that's, am I within effective range of the enemy's weapons, right? And where's my cover? We're in an open field. They have machine guns and RPGs. They already hit exactly where we are. We need to maneuver, right? So he dismounts, and the lieutenant runs over to Kari to do like a little key leader engagement in the middle of this open field. And Kari starts beating the shit out of my lieutenant and smacking him. and telling him he's a fucking idiot and this, that, and the other, and then basically takes his dudes and they mob into the town, you know what I'm saying, and they handle their business.
Oh, shit.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not the first time Kari did something like that, because this is the time, right? And going back to, so I have personal biases against certain individuals or whatever, right? Because of the time frame in which I was in Afghanistan, right? So Obama based his entire like election off of withdrawing troops, right? But what he actually did was he deployed the same number of troops, right? The same number of boxes, basically the same number of units, but he cut us to 80%. So the normal infantry company is like 120, 130 strong, but we only deployed, I think it was like 80 or 90 people.
Okay.
So my first day in country, I did 72 hours of tower guard, right? Because first platoon got hit, second platoon got hit, and none of them could make it back to the FOB because not only did they take out the one bridge through the AO and just a bunch of extenuating circumstances, you know what I'm saying? And what his idea was, and I understand the logic behind what Obama was trying to do, was to put the Afghans first, right? They were embedding Afghans with us to like make them be the visual, right? The optics of it, right? And if you think about in America, when we've been having the National Guard supporting the police, for instance, or supporting the vaccine centers or whatever, you don't want the National Guard in front because that gives off bad optics, right? People are afraid of that. So you want these people that you know and are comfortable with being the ones in the front. So that's what we were trying to do and trying to build. So I understand it, but there was some issues there. But as far as like the culture of whether or not, so that was my experience. I know my sister company at the time, right? A lot of them dudes they were in what's called the Tangi Valley, and it was not a very good place to be. And I know that their ANA would run the moment firefights would kick off, and they would just, you know what I mean? They're very coward. So it goes back to climate and culture, right? So I can have Kari, who's a great fucking officer in the Afghan army, but if he doesn't have any NCOs or he doesn't have any individuals under him that are, you know, doing the right thing, the entire unit goes to shit. And you can say the same for in the army, right? When you have a great leadership team, but you have no subordinate leaders that know what the fuck they're doing, that unit it's not able to conduct its wartime medal taskings. It can't meet its band of excellence.
Need a safer bank. I've been saving change. I need some space. Chatting in my face. Get from around my way.